Hello and welcome to another episode of VM Session 2, the show where we dive into ideas, people, and strategies shaping the future of work and business. Today, we are exploring a space that's at the heart of every successful organization, that is talent acquisition. And to help us decode what it takes to build a world class team across borders and industries, we have someone truly exceptional joining us. Our guest today is Navin Patel, the global head of talent acquisition at Affine, a premier consulting firm in data analytics and generative AI. With over 20 years of global experience, Naveen has led transformative hiring initiatives across India, the US, UK, APAC, and the EU. It's indeed a pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Puneet.
So, Naveen, you've had such an incredible journey across geographies and industries. Can you take us back from the beginning, how it all started? What sparked your interest in talent acquisition, and how did it evolve into a global leadership role?
Okay, to be honest, I was into recruitment by chance and not by choice. Way back in Accenture, I had got an opportunity in recruitment, and that's how my journey started. But I think it became more exciting getting into the world of recruitment because it was quite evolving, and India as a country was, hiring big numbers, growing in the tech space, and that's how the journey started with large numbers at Accenture. Then there's so many stakeholders that you need to juggle with, parallelly to ensure that you're able to add outcome for a company. And I think it's makes me feel good when you're able to contribute to the growth of a company. And I think like sales day is also a particular function that really contributes to the growth and the kind of quality of people that we bring in. So that's how it's been in recruiting all this while, Puneet.
Amazing. I agree. And to sum up, there's a lot of energy in TS space, There's always something new happening.
Yes, that's very true, Puri. There's always something or the other coming to you as a new scenario, either from the candidate side or business side, or there are surprises that come to you, right? And that's what keeps it all exciting. And with the new changes, challenges, new technologies, the candidate market, employer market, they're changing, evolving from time to time, and that makes it more exciting.
You've just suggested that it's evolving. So, what's the biggest shift that you've witnessed in how organizations approach talent in the last 5 years?
So I think they become more flexible towards candidates. There was a time when the organizations were rigid, saying that this is our process,
The
follow it or take it.
pre-corona era.
Correct, correct, that's right.
Yeah.
So earlier it used to be take it or leave it types. You had to come to office, finish all your rounds, in-person interviews. They were kind of rigid. But I think that's changed after the pandemic times, where it's become more flexible, more customized, and also companies have realized that virtual interviews are here to stay, and that's become a particular process. So I think that's a big shift, and also we have also been leveraging a lot of AI and technology into hiring, right? So I think for a long time, people, got one particular ATS and they used to continuously keep using the same thing. But I think now people are open to exploring new ATSs which are AI enabled, looking at the areas where they can automate hiring process because it's become more and more complex in attracting talent, and there are a lot of applications that come in. But how do you really screen through and get the best candidate for the company? I think that's becoming a bigger challenge now with all resumes becoming so rosy, so creative. It's really difficult for a recruiter to differentiate, which is a good resume or a bad resume, and all look good.
I
And then,
agree.
right, so that's where it is, Puneet. I think the changes, in terms of how we're hiring and how the company's looking at a candidate is completely changed in the last 5 years.
I agree. And we used to say that the world has changed drastically. There was before Christ, Anno Domini, and now we again say it is before Corona and after disaster, how
Right.
the world has shaped up again. So you rightly said AI is transforming recruitments. So in your view, how will its role fundamentally change in the next 5 to 7 years or 5 to 10 years? How do you see that?
So I think it'll become more of a enabler. It'll become more like a pilot, co-pilot for the
Wow.
recruiter, right? So like a pilot, who does few things, but he has a knowledge of how the plane is flying. He just needs to be there and monitor and any new scenario that comes up, then the person has to get involved, right? I think recruiter's role will be something similar, where a lot of automation will happen in terms of outreach to the candidates, collecting application, doing auto screening with a particular candidate, filtering the particular candidate, auto scheduling for a particular interview. So wherever there is a particular mismatch or human intervention required, that's when recruiter will really need to play. I think it's going to become more and more enabled, and the recruiter will have to really become influencer, right? In terms of how do the person attract a particular candidate, and the AI will enable a recruiter more like a recommendation engine. We're talking about prompting and then suggesting and predicting, but I think it's
Yeah.
going to be more like a recommending engine to a recruiter, right? In terms of what a thing the recruiter has to do for a particular candidate. It will probably assess the stages of a particular candidate, the engagement levels, and then tell the recruiter what they need to do, right? It could be even up to a onboarding stage. If a candidate is probably shopping for more offers or probably seems disengaged or not taking
Yeah.
action on something. So it will start bringing in not just in terms of dashboard, but in terms of even giving recommendation what the recruiter could do to mitigate those, right? So it's going to be more proactive, I would say.
I agree. But a lot of leaders, they're still not they're not open to accepting AI. So, what are the common misconceptions, since you have been into a lot of forums, what are the common misconceptions you hear from HR leaders about AI in hiring? Do you think resumes give a complete picture of the candidate and AI is able to assess that? Or we require something else?
No, I think it used to be that way. I think a few years ago, where candidates were really reluctant to fudge their resumes or put something there. But I think now it's become a norm where people are just putting the resumes. In fact, they're using AI to create resumes. They're asking AI to they're putting different prompts, right? Smart prompts saying that help me create a resume which will basically improve my matching score to a JD, by a AI
Yeah.
platform. But now that percentage increased because people are not scared of changing jobs, switching jobs even within a year and a half. And looking at some of the data, I saw that in India, I think the average tenure that a technology candidate spends is about close to a year, right?
Yeah.
There are times
So
when people
11
used
months.
to,
Yeah.
right? And I very well remember about maybe 10, 15 years ago, even a recruiter used to just throw a resume, in case someone is not stable, someone change jobs.
Yeah, so on one end, you've suggested, the talent pool is limited. On the other, there's a trust issue, and the third factor is again, people not showing up on the day of joining. So there are quite a few problems, But if you have to, suggest which is the number one pain point in hiring today, so what would be it?
So I think probably there are two important ones. One definitely is, like I said, the filtering of candidates, because the resumes are so good, even AI is able to not catch it, right? And then the moment you talk to them, so the number of application.
What is that else factor? Is it you suggested, the 5 days working or the hybrid working model,
All
or
right.
maybe it's work from home? Is it the culture part that you're talking about, or you're highlighting something else over here?
No, I think it's a choice that the candidates make these days, right? So there were times earlier where people used to go after brand, go after a certain notion that they had about a particular brand, but now they are very very open, and the risk taking appetite I think has increased, right? So they are not bothered about making the choice, joining a new company, a startup company. So they're looking at the flexibility option. They're looking at the kind of culture, brand value. They're looking at interacting, engaging with the people who are working with a particular company and getting the inputs, right? So earlier people never had all these options, but now people do their homework. They look at social media reviews. They do a lot of homework, and then they decide whether to join a company or not. And there are deciding factors, like I said, remote working option versus maybe some of the flexibility that they're getting in a particular company, which makes them switch.
Yeah, that's from the candidate's perspective. What about the organization? Does the organizations also these days are hiring in terms of the cultural fitment of an individual?
Definitely, they do that, but I think somewhere that gap will always remain because of people who really evaluate, interview a candidate, and the person with whom the candidate is going to be working, maybe in a future project, are different, right? Because I'm assessing a particular person for a particular skill and particular role, a particular expectation, and humans. they have natural biases, right? From one person to other person who interviews them, they'll have a that particular difference, right? So I probably might be overselling a particular candidate during the interview discussion, but when the person is actually working with someone else in the organization later, there is definitely a difference there. So we definitely look at how do we look at a overall a generic cultural fitment in terms of assessing the candidate, and that's where a particular round is done, where we basically focus more on the alignment to our core values, and how the person would fit into the culture, with the person be able to navigate through the system, the kind of processes that we have, the kind of people that we have, the kind of clients that we have. So we look at that particular generic fitment to ensure that there is very minimal mismatch after a candidate joins the organization.
So building great teams is a goal, but what does great team means today? Our viewers would love to know what is the meaning now. The definition was different earlier. Now, what is the definition? Post Corona.
I think earlier was everyone just doing things together, right, and helping a particular organization achieve. But I think now it's evolved, in the current scenario in terms of not just working together, but also in terms of surviving, in terms of collaborating, in terms of backing up each other, in terms of sharing knowledges, best practices. I think that's how it's changing, right? Because people are working from multiple time zones, different shifts, requiring flexibility, and with a lot of automation happening in their, in the work. How do they can really differentiate? How can they bring in the differentiation of humans, right? How can they be more creative? How can there be more different thought processes, right? So I think a team which is interacting, collaborative, is going to be more successful now, because that's really going to be required in current day, when people are working from multiple geographies, time zones, requiring flexibility. I think that's going to be important for a successful team, where the overall outcome, a goal is left to the team, right? And also other important change in the last few years is, with the new generation, they don't like to be told how to do it. Just tell them what is required and let them do it. I think that's something which I would say is less of micromanagement, giving them more ownership of the task, right? I think that will really help a team perform well.
Okay, so while we are looking at the candidate, what kind of a skills do we look at? It's is it only the technical skills, or the so-called hard skills, or we also talk about the behavioral side or the soft skills? Is it more towards where we talk about communication, empathy? So is it still that much important these days, given the fact that there are remote teams, there are people working on a hybrid mode? So what are your views around this? How's there, there's a shift in the hiring procedure?
And it is very important right now, because we are dealing with people who need to collaborate and engage, right? And I think,
True.
like I was just talking about the great teams, right? I think people openly communicating, talking to each other. I think that is very very important in a function, and that's going to be a differentiating factor of how people collaborate and perform going forward. With a lot of things getting automated, like from high code to low code to no code, right? So a lot of things are getting automated, and what's going to really change is how people are going to be creative, right? How are they going to innovate? And for that innovation, I think communication is going to be a key, right? For example, if I'm in a client-facing role, it's not just about me communicating with client, but for me, ability to understand what client is saying and how I can probably do more than what client is expecting. So I think those kind of skill sets are going to be very important. Interpersonal skills, not just communicating, but ability to influence, ability to attract, ability to sell. So I think they're looking at people carrying all these skill sets, and I think earlier we had very defined roles, defined people taking care of it. But now with a lot of automation happening, people are expected to do probably take care of maybe two three different responsibilities and areas, right? So that people have to play all these things, right? And for that particular purpose, the communication skills are going to be very very important. There are times when people used to just say that this person, if it's in coding, is good enough. I don't need anything else. But now
Yeah.
they're looking at how can this play person be, a good communicator? How can he influence the team members? How can he do a client-facing role? So I think there are a lot of responsibilities that are given to a particular role now. Maybe 5, 10 years back, it was a very different role. Similarly with the recruiters, right? Doing a back-end job to do a front-ending job to doing a TA advisory job, right? So the roles are evolving where communication and all these aspects become, soft skills become very important.
I agree, but these are still unmeasurable, these soft skills. So, are there any creative methods that you are seeing or using right now, which are there?
So I think there are certain behavioral assessments that people typically do, and there are some companies who even gamify. But I think standardizing versus customizing is very important. I think that very few organizations are doing where they really understand the crux of a role and are able to customize such assessments to gauge them there. But apart from that, obviously, we also do some kind of case studies or exercises, for some of the candidates, right? So from there we get to know that thought process, thinking process. We give them different scenarios, right? And then we are able to figure out how a person is going to behave in a certain environment, or even during my interviews for a recruiter, right? I kind of ask questions that are really really important for a good recruiter, right? And then I figure out whether the person is able to really respond on those kind of things, and the wavelengths are matching or not matching.
I agree. So, one thing you suggested was about gamification being used. So, is it being used more as a tool to attract Gen Z, or Gen Z is more skeptical in using gamification or such tools? AI driven hiring. Are they more akin to it, or they are against it? What
No,
do you
no,
feel?
I think they are very, very open to it. I would say Gen Z is, I think, more compared to all other generations, they are embracing AI technologies, anything which is digital, right? And that's where they are first. And I would say they are always that they are like people who are born with a device, right? So that's the kind of generation they are into, and they are very curious. They want to explore, they want to try out new things, and they are very, very open about it. I feel.
Yes. So, how do you perceive workplace 2020 would be in terms of attracting, assessing, and securing top talents?
I think,
2030,
yeah,
workplace 2030. That's 5 years from now.
right. Now, I think a lot of tools are coming into AI right now, in recruitment right now, AI tools, platform. So I think it'll become more of a automated way of, looking at candidates, at least in the areas where, where they can be automated, where the volumes are high, right? In terms of, say, example, sourcing and screening. I think this is where the bulk of the funnel, right? And takes a lot of way time from the recruiters. I think if those are getting automated, and I'm sure while there are mismatches of candidate and the resume mismatch and all that, but I think they'll be automated. For example, I envision a process where you just put a job description, the AI will go out and source profiles, do your job posting, get candidate application. When the application comes in, it will go and do interactive screening with the candidate, maybe a video or a a voice kind of thing, assess the candidate, in a manner that a human does, right? So there are a lot of platforms that are coming up now which are trying to mimic human emotions, way of interacting, and not just a standard list of questions. I think all these things will eliminate all these processes and give few selected candidates, to the recruiter, and the recruiter will again try to engage them, sell about a particular company, look at how they influence, how they attract a particular talent. I think that's where they will really play a particular role. Plus, they'll play a significant advisory role to the business in terms of really pushing them and telling them, saying that this is the pool available, this is the best candidate, and helping expedite the process.
Okay, great. I think something we are looking at it from a perspective, the machines are growing. So we used to talk about agility earlier. So what are your views about cognitive agility these days with chat GPTs of the world and all the LLMs coming in? So will it be a critical skill for 2030, or you feel there's something else which is also required?
Yeah, absolutely, it's going to be, because with so many with Gen AI coming into picture, I think it's becoming more and more important to focus on cognitive ability, right? How you are able to adapt, shape, and learn fast, and that's going to be very very important. I would say for any function, any role, because Gen AI is cutting across all the functions, and that's one of the abilities that some of the hiring managers are focusing on, because the world future is uncertain, right? And that's where people's cognitive ability, agility will really help in figuring out if the person is going to be really be with you for long and help you, or the person is going to fade out.
True, I agree. So that also brings me to a question. What would be your advice to to the CHROs of the world right now for the future? How should they get up? How should they be ready?
So I think from a AI standpoint or any tool implementation standpoint, I think they have to be very clear on the objective, right? Because I've seen some of them really fail, with AI implementation or process changes. I think they have to redesign, rethink, look at overall organization perspective from a future standpoint, right? Seeing that not looking at what existing or looking at some past trends or past assessments or past things that have worked, right? It may not work for the future generation. So they have to see how they can redesign, rethink, where multi-generational workforce can work together, how they can all grow the company together, and what is the right thing to do for the organization, right? Just because there is a lot of buzz on AI, I just cannot go and implement a AI tool in the company when either the company is not ready, the maturity level is not ready, or there's not enough communication bind that's happened with the team who's going to be using it. And personally for me, it's very important that there's a significant buy-in from the users, right? Before I implement a new technology, new platform, I ensure that team understand and I derive a particular common value that is there for everyone, and that's where the success comes in when implementing something. And then also after implementing, there has to be a constant monitoring till the time something really becomes successful and customized and giving the result that you're expecting.
I agree. I agree. So, Naveen, one last question that I have.
Sure.
If you could debunk one myth about AI in recruitment, what would it be?
So I think one is people think AI, once it's implemented, it's an automatic thing, right? It will always be set. It is like you put AI and then it's set, right? But it is not, because if things are evolving, scenarios evolving. So it's a simple example of doing a CV and a JD match. AI is doing that automatic, but now we realize that the resumes also are getting created by AI. So you really cannot rely on that particular factor which was there earlier, right? So you have to constantly keep looking at what is working, not working, and evolving, and then adapting and changing the processes, right? So you have to really, not close your eyes, shut your eyes from AI implementation. I think people think once you do it and then leave it to AI and everything is set, right? But that's something which is not true, and there are a lot of instances that have happened where people figure out that probably it used to be holding good, but because of other factors around it, it is not holding good anymore.
I agree. I agree. And thanks. That brings us to the end of today's episode. A huge thanks to you, Naveen, for joining us and sharing such valuable insights. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. And to our listeners, thank you for spending your time with us today. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a little review, share it with someone who would benefit. I, Puneet Arora, would be thankful to you. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet.